How close are we talking?
With my camera case, they were centimeters away. The horn actually touched my camera case, the horn of the rhino. And one occasion it touched it and it fell.
And what about when you're holding it? How close are you? On these smaller lenses, on the wider lenses?
A couple of meters.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is. It is.
In the vehicle or out of the vehicle?
Both.
Welcome to the Big Photo Hunt Podcast, a show where we talk with aspiring and professional photographers to help us all grow and improve our photography together. I'm your host, Ken Deckinger. If you're one of our community members and you'd like to be a guest on the show, please visit bigphotohunt.com for more information. Today, we're going on safari, figuratively speaking, because I'm in the studio right now. But my guest is Big Photo Hunt member Amish Chhagan. Amish is a wildlife photographer who grew up in Zambia. After a stint in the UK and a soft landing in Spain, he discovered his passion for photography only to find it converge with his love for the wildlife in Africa. That's what we're going to talk about today. Wildlife and safari photography with a specific focus on the Masai Mara in Kenya. Amish, you can introduce yourself better than I ever could, so take it away.
So my name is Amish Chhagan. I grew up in Zambia. I moved from Zambia to the UK back in 2002 or so, for university and the like. I then started my career in London. I then moved to Barcelona for a number of reasons. The major reason was I met a girl, now my partner, my wife, and the mother of my child. Growing up in Zambia was pretty cool. I didn't realize it at the time till I lived in the UK. We had no internet. We had one TV channel that started at 5 p.m. every day and was finished by 8 p.m. Every other weekend, my dad would hop into the car and would drive 2 hours away from Lusaka, which is the capital city, which is where I grew up. And we were in the middle of a national park with elephants and zebras and the like. So I was exposed to a lot of the flora and fauna of that part of the world from a very young age. And I guess the serenity of these lands and spotting wildlife, it was exciting for me. And then more so when I found photography.
Today, you focus a lot of your work on wildlife photography, specifically in Africa. I know you love the Masai Mara, and a lot of your photos have the big five in them. There's other animals. I've seen giraffes and stuff, obviously. But can you explain to everyone what the big five are and also what the draw of the Masai Mara is to you? And also what the Masai Mara is?
I don't like to describe the animals in the big five way because the origins of the big five were the five biggest and most difficult animals to hunt. So the buffalo, the lion, the elephant, the leopard, and the
rhino?
The rhino, yes. Are the big five, and they're the biggest, the toughest animals to hunt. Actually, there's a very well-established photographer, I think his name is Graham Greene, who set up the new Big Five. This was a couple of years ago, and the new Big Five was based on a voting consensus from mostly creatives and photographers and artists and conservationists, that what are the top Big Five animals that we would like to shoot with our cameras. I can't remember what they are, but I know polar bears in there. I think tigers in there as well. So it's a whole new big list. So I don't like to refer it as a big five because of the origins and how you get it.
And now a word from our sponsor. Who are we kidding? We don't have a sponsor. But what we do have is the Big Photo Hunt, a quickly growing online community for amateur and aspiring photographers to grow their photography together. And just to brag a little bit, it's pretty cool and quite frankly could be the world's friendliest photography club. Our members are just nice. So if you're a photographer and you're nice, but you're not yet a member, log in at bigphotohunt.com to see what in the world I'm talking about. Now back to the show.
I really do like the Masai Mara, you're right, and I'll give you a little bit of a background story why it's special for me. So the first time I went to Masai Mara was actually after a good friend's wedding. The wife was from Nairobi, which is the capital city of Kenya, and she organized a trip. It's like, people that want to come after the wedding, let's go, we're going to see the lions in Masai Mara. And at that point, I was playing with photography already. I had a basic Nikon DSLR. My wife got me a small telephoto lens. It happened to be around my birthday time, so just in time for this trip. And I took it with me. And the professional photographer that did the wedding was also very passionate about wildlife and wildlife photography. So I was like, trying to speak to him and get some tips and likes. And he's like, why don't you just come with me in the car every game drive we go and show you some basic things. And that's what I did. I think the first thing that really blew my mind was the sheer density of wildlife in Masai Mara. Because I'm used to going with the guides in Zambia or in Zimbabwe or wherever it is and trying to find lion tracks, and then maybe we'll see 1 or 2 lions in 3 days or whatever. Here, leopards were walking in the middle of the day. I had never experienced that before. Leopards are generally quite nocturnal. They don't come out in the day. But here they are. And lions were literally walking past the front of the car and the side of the car. You could put your hand out and touch the mane if you wanted to. I don't advise doing that. But it was fascinating. I was blown away, and then came back to my tent, went through the hundreds of photos, and I was like, wow, okay, this is cool. And then I came back home and I started post-processing some of the photos. I'd taken a couple of decent shots, actually. Even the professional photographer was, I don't say impressed, but he was like, oh, good photo. It was a moment that I was hooked. It was a convergence point for me that connected wildlife, something very nostalgic and something I grew up with, and photography, which quickly became a creative passion. And then with time, purpose and the underrated importance of conservation. So these things kind of came together, the pieces of my creative puzzle. That's why Masai Mara is special for me. And so when I take guests, it's relative. I never guarantee, but I can say I can almost guarantee that you're going to see some great game, and probably the same lions over and over again. You get to know these characters, and it takes you down a different route as opposed to just spotting a lion and that's it.
I have been to Kruger in South Africa and didn't see a leopard, actually. I saw the 4 others. I saw plenty of elephants, rhinos, buffaloes. It was awesome. I saw a lion. We were on a game drive and we were sitting in the back of the truck and saw a lion that was maybe 6 feet from the vehicle, and we just stopped. And I had never seen, for you, I'm sure you've seen this stuff all the time, probably better. I had never seen anything like this before. And this lion just sat there. It wasn't doing anything. It was just looking at us. We were looking at it. And our guide said, just don't stand up and do anything crazy.
Yeah, don't move too much.
Exactly. We just sat there, and we were popping some photos off, and I have a video of that experience. Changed my life because seeing that animal in the wild, I recognized how different they are from animals that we grew up with in the zoo. And in a lot of ways brought this conflict into my life because on one hand, you want the zoos so that people can be educated and connected to these animals. But on the other hand, it's like, whoa, that's not life for these animals. Yep. It's not even close. And it sounds cliche, I think, especially in the name of conservation. But I learned how much of a disconnect there is between like reality and what an animal is in its environment versus what it is in a zoo.
Absolutely.
And I think you have to kind of experience this to understand that. But
absolutely.
Let's talk about how you actually photograph these animals. I've seen photos that you appear very close to some of these. I've actually seen photos of you that you are very close to them. It looks like you're 6 feet from this rhino. How are you photographing these animals, and where are you situated when you're doing this?
Mostly in a car, in an open car. I have a guide with me, and I tend to use very specific guides, those that I know that they understand things about positioning of a car, they understand lighting. That's an important aspect to photography and wildlife photography. When I started, it was all about using my telephoto lens, the big 600 mil or 400 mil lens, and positioning ourselves and trying to get the best photo, whether it's action, whether it's portrait, whatever it may be. But I guess what happens with time and as you progress, you just want to continue to challenge yourself creatively. So there's a few things that I do. For example, I have a monopod and I kind of drop it down to the ground. So I get a low angle shot of the subject or something that's walking by. You got to be careful with this. And your guide also needs to say if it's okay. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, because you don't actually get to see. I have a remote and I kind of take the photos. There's been one or two shots that have worked. The other way, which I've started to do more, is I have a waterproof protective case where I put my camera in and there's a tripod and it's kind of hidden away, and hopefully animals will pass by or someone will get curious, like rhinos, and they would come, they would see it, they would smell it, they would see it's nothing, and then would walk away. And in that time, I'm like, you cannot do that everywhere. A lot of parks won't allow these things, so you got to know the rules, you got to know the guidelines, et cetera, et cetera. I think more and more what I've started doing is use smaller lenses to get the full picture and get a different composition, get a different angle. So, have that sunset in the background, position it so that the lion's head is in front of the sun. A lot of it is reactive while you're in the field. You'll see something and you're like, I need a shot of that. Also, the other thing I'm trying to do more of is be proactive. So I see a scene in the field, a nice tree or something that is composed very well for an image. And I'm like, okay, let's see what passes by here. Maybe there's an elephant, or maybe there's some zebras or whatever. And you kind of frame it in a different way, again, with a smaller lens.
With these smaller lenses, are you getting closer to the animals also, or are you just creating a wider shot?
Both. I would get closer either through a monopod or physically, but physically it's a bit hit and miss because a lot of the public parks, national parks, won't allow you to first come out the car and interact. And obviously these animals are dangerous. It doesn't need to be a lion or an elephant or a hippo. Even a zebra can be quite dangerous. But there are times where I've been out of the car, like private conservancies, and relatively close to a subject. I have not been scared because I completely trust the people I'm with. That's why they're so important. And the other aspect is just to get that wider shot. It tells more of a story. And that's also what photography is about, especially wildlife photography.
How close are we talking?
With my camera case, they were centimeters away. The horn actually touched my camera case, the horn of the rhino. And one occasion it touched it and it fell.
And what about when you're holding it? How close are you? On these smaller lenses, on the wider lenses?
A couple of meters.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is.
In the vehicle or out of the vehicle?
Both. If I'm in the vehicle and the animal is that close, it's unlikely that I'm going to get anything good, just because you're looking down at the animal. It's one of the first things I tell the students on my photo safaris is look for eye level or below. That's the difference between an amateur shot and a good shot. That's not to say that you cannot get good photos from a high level, but generally speaking, that kind of eye level or below, and you adjust. You see what works and what doesn't and what speaks to you. Your photo will be very different from my photo, will be very different from the next person, right?
How many of these are keepers at the end of a game drive or at the end of a day? Hey there, it's Ken. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Big Photo Hunt podcast. I'm really happy you're here. I wanted to just punch in and tell you about the Big Photo Hunt in case you weren't yet a member. We're building the world's most friendly online photography community, and it's pretty friendly. Not to mention, it's the best place for amateur photographers to grow by sharing photos and being inspired by other members. Members post only one photo a week. Then the community upvotes their favorite photos. At the end of each week, we celebrate the most upvoted photos. It's really fun. So if you're not yet a member, check it out, bigphotohunt.com, and reach out to me if I can answer any questions. I'm around. Now back to the show.
Let me rephrase your question. Money shots? I'd say I'd be lucky if I get 5, 7, maybe 10 at the most in a single trip. That would be a really good number, actually. If I get 10 money shots, that's rare.
Over the course of like a 7-day trip or a 9-day trip kind of thing.
Yeah. I'll take 1,000 photos, but when I go through them and I assess and I look, maybe I take 5 money shots from my initial assessment, but then 6 months later, I'll go through those photos and I find another couple of hidden gems. That happens a lot. It just happened 2 days ago. I was looking through some old footage and I found some really cool shots that I haven't touched. But when I looked at them then, I was like, no, I don't see anything. But I look at it now and I'm like, I see something. That's creativity for you.
Is that what it is? I wonder why that happens, because I go through the same thing. I happen to really enjoy street photography, and I'll go out for a day and come back and maybe 1 or 2 of them are good and that's it. And I'm like, okay. And then I look like a year later and I was like, wow, that's a cool shot. And I start playing around with it in Lightroom and it comes out to be something. Why is that? I don't understand that.
There's nothing rational about your creative juices and flow. There's nothing rational about it. And that's why you have some of the best neurologists in the world that don't understand creativity. I mean, they don't understand the brain, first of all. Like, we are just scratching the surface. But creativity is it doesn't make sense to anyone. It's very difficult to even explain what creativity is or the creative process. The language is insufficient to describe our own creative process. And it's very individualistic. It's very human and it's very unique, like our fingerprint. It's this kind of known unknown. And talking about what we were just talking about, that moment that I saw those photos for the first time, I didn't see anything, probably because I was rushing through. I was like on a target. I need to get through all these photos. I'm just really excited to go through all of them. So I need to go through all of them. It's just emotion. It's just exciting to see what you've captured. But then, 6 months later or a year later, you're calmer. Your mind is more at ease, more peaceful, more calm. And you look through it. And your inner creative self, however you want to describe it, sees something else.
I wonder if the lapse of finding photos in that initial batch when you go out and shoot is also maybe blocked by what you think you're looking for. So yes. I'll go out and I'll take... Absolutely. I think so, right? Like, I'll go out and I'll take photos, and in my head, my subconscious is looking for something, and I'm not finding it. And then when you go back a year later, you're not looking for that. And then you see something like, oh, that's a cool photo.
I think it's also partly to do with your experiences in life in general, what feeds your intuition, and that has an impact on your creative flow.
We could go on forever about this topic. We'll have to do another episode.
We can. Let's do it. This can be part 1.
Okay. Well, let's get back to wildlife photography. In your mind, what are, say, 3 elements that make for the perfect wildlife photo? 3 attributes that you've got to have, or that above all that you'd want.
That's another podcast session in itself. and this is, of course, very personal. I think the first and most obvious thing is composition. Understand the composition guidelines that are out there. There's the rule of thirds, which is the most famous. It should be the guide of thirds, in my opinion. Yeah, I'm sure you know it. It just splits the image out into 9 rectangles or squares or whatever, the same size. And so using that composition technique, get the face of the lion on one of the 4 intersections, for example, depending on what the background is, depending on what the foreground is. Things like if you're capturing a leopard walking from left to right, for example, leave some space on the right for the image to breathe. Silence is important. Space is important. I was thinking about a quote from, I think, Mozart. Music is in the silence between the notes. It's the same aspect, or same philosophy. You need space. So if you have the leopard really close to the edge of the photo with its face, it looks off. It could work, but generally it looks off. So basic things like that. Light, playing with light and playing with shadows, the contrast, the blacks and the whites, the golden light, sunrise and sunset are some of the best moments to get some crazy photos. You can play with silhouette, the sun facing you, backlight, side light when the sun is on the side. Typically in the middle of the day, if the sun is up in the sky, you kind of get the shadows coming down. So if you take a portrait of an animal, there'll be shadows on their face. Notice that I'm very careful on how I speak about this, because in the middle of the day, you can still get an amazing shot. There's no right and wrong here. The third thing, have fun. When you are more peaceful, more calm, when you are in that state, you are naturally more creative. And so relax, have fun, don't put pressure on yourself, don't think about external validation, and you'll be surprised to see what you can create. I'm still surprised today when I go into the field and I'm like, oh, wow, okay, I didn't see that coming.
I like the third one. That's pretty important. I have 3 questions that I wrap up every interview with. The first question is, what is your favorite genre to shoot and why?
If we're talking about thematic areas or spaces, it's definitely wildlife. And it incorporates nature as well.
The second question, what camera system do you use?
I use Nikon. I have 2 bodies that I usually use. One is a Nikon Z9, which is their flagship camera. It's a freaking powerhouse. And the other one is it's a Z7. They're both quite high resolution in terms of megapixels. And so one I use for telephoto and one I use for my smaller lens. And I need to change as I need to. It makes sense for me to have 2 bodies in the field because I don't want to be having one camera and changing every, it's tough to do that. So I usually have the big lens on that, and then I have a 70 to 200 on the other camera. And if I need to, I'll just put a wider one.
And number 3, on a scale of 1 to 10, how often do you get that burning itch to just go out and make photos? 10 being the highest, 1 being the least.
I would do it every day if I could. I put it at 8 or 9. And the reason I'm not saying 10 is because it's nice to have a break from that world as well. It makes you miss it more. Like I'm not in the field all the time, and I'll go at least 2 or 3 times a year. But in between those months, it's building up. The disadvantage is that it takes me a day or 2 to really get into it, because I'm not with my camera all the time.
I find that when I travel and go to a new city and do street photography, I'm always off on that first day. It just gets junk. And then the second day I start really getting into my groove. And I think it has something to do with getting that camera connected to you again, but also, for me at least, when you're in a city, understanding the culture and the nature of the flow of the city and the tolerances people have with you, because every city is a little different.
That's an interesting point here, because there's either information overload, meaning that you've studied the city, you know hotspots, this is where I'm going to go, that's where I'm going to go, you understand the culture. And then there's the complete other extreme where you're just like, I'm just going to go and see what happens. Wildlife photography, I think it's a bit different. I think understanding animal ethology and behavior is really important, because sometimes things happen and it takes 3 seconds. And if you're not ready, you're missing the shot.
I want people to go see your photos.
Thank you so much.
And I know that you are also organizing safari photo tours. And so I want people to have more information about that. Where can people find you? Social media, your website, online, in the world?
I use Instagram mostly. It's at chags.photography. And my website, which is chagsphotography.com. Chags is spelled CHAGS, photography.com, all one word. There's basically two types of safaris that I've posted. The first one is a photo safari. There'll be very small groups, 3 or 4 people, to ensure lots of face time with me. And then the second type is a private safari. So where I would take families, honeymoon couples, friends, not massive groups. I mean, if the family is like 10 people, that's the size of the family. But I try and keep us in one car. If we need to extend to 2 cars, we'll do that.
For our listeners, if you are interested in any of Amish's safari photo trips, DM him on Instagram or on his website. You could find contact information there. And yes. I'm trying to coordinate a time to go out with him to the Masai Mara. And as soon as...
That was my next question. When are we going?
Yeah.
I'm so excited to take you.
I'm so trying to find the window to get it into. Amish, thank you so much for being here with me. I've really enjoyed it. Loved learning about all of this.
Thanks a lot, Ken. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for joining me for today's episode. Our next show will feature more valuable stories from our community members. If you'd like to audition to be a guest, please visit bigphotohunt.com for more information. Thanks again for listening today.